Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Tider Insider Television. Across the studio from Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris as we continue to work at a safe social distance here in our WVUA 23 studios inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. Well, Alabama football had a practice on Saturday at Bryant-Denny Stadium. They simulated a lot of game type situations in that scrimmage, or practice, I should say, similar to scrimmage, but not a full-fledged scrimmage. And based on some intel that we have heard here at TITV, we're positive that steps are being made in the right direction for the Crimson Tide. Now, here are some of the notes that Rodney and the Tider Insider staff put out at TiderInsider.com about Saturday's practice. Mac Jones seemed to find his groove. We're told, hit deep shots to Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle against the first-team defense. Plenty of options at running back based on what Rodney has been able to put together with Najee Harris, Brian Robinson, Trey Sanders, and those three true freshmen. Rodell Williams stood out in particular during portions of Saturday's practice that, as I said, were game-type situations simulated. On defense, Jordan Battle is primed for a breakout season. And after last season's ending, the defense has been revisiting what the Alabama standard is really all about and how they can use it to go above and beyond this season.
The Alabama standard is something we talk about every single day, workouts, meetings, practice. We got to approach everything, with that mentality that, we want to be the best. I mean, especially last season, being 11-2 at Alabama, that's not, something that we would look back at and, be happy about or be proud of. Of course, we want to go undefeated. We want to win national championships. And that's the Alabama standard.
I feel like our team has had a lot of growth over the last couple of weeks. We've been kind of staying focused to the task of what's ahead of us and, just staying grounded, and everybody just keeping their eyes on the prize. So I think our team is coming together completely.
Ronnie, before we get to Saturday's practice, did you look at those two guys? I'm not sure they're training to play football or getting ready for Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
I mean, my gosh.
Yeah, no question. Think about this, Gary. Christian Harris was a wide receiver / defensive back in high school at 240 pounds, returning kickoffs 99 yards for touchdowns, those types of things. Can you imagine him on the high school level?
Those shoulders on those guys, unbelievable. All right, let's get to Saturday. Some people have gone out on the internet and called it a scrimmage. It was situational. There was certainly some scrimmage activity, but a lot of stuff that they're going to see in games, this coming season, Rodney. So it was not a full-fledged scrimmage. It was a practice with a lot of situational game stuff. Quarterback-wise, Mac Jones, we already talked about. Paul Tyson, I'm told, had a really good day. Bryce Young certainly shined, although he has, missed a lot of time, not only in the spring but this fall as well. But that seems to be a good situation. I think it's clear, Rodney, that Mac Jones is kind of establishing himself as the starter, but both those other guys I think are going to play.
Yeah, well, I think so. I think when you look at it, Gary, certainly in the circumstances that we're in right now, you really never know. As a player, you better be ready to play, and I do think that you'll probably see the quarterbacks get more reps in games just to have them prepared if that situation were to arise, that they had to start and play in a game. And every game's important, as you know, Gary, certainly in the SEC. Now every game being 10-game SEC schedule. So I think there is a good chance you could see Bryce Young, Paul Tyson in a game maybe earlier than normally you would expect in certain situations if the situation presents itself.
Of course, the quarterbacks, the running backs, the wide receivers, they're all dependent on that offensive line. You don't have offensive line play, and it doesn't really matter what you're trying to do offensively. This is an offensive line with a lot of depth, a lot of versatility, a lot of experience, pretty much everything you want. The only position, Rodney, where there seems to be any kind of issue in regards to who's going to be the starter is center, maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think with Chris Owens, obviously he started the first 4 games last year. Deontay Brown came back from his suspension, so they bumped Landon Dickerson in there for the rest of the year, and he did a fantastic job. I think, Gary, ideally, if you could have Landon Dickerson and Deontay Brown at your guards and find a center, maybe Darian Dalcourt, that certainly would be an option. If not, there's a chance that you could see Landon Dickerson back at center with Emil Ekiyor, who's also an outstanding young player. at one of the guard spots. So Chris Owens, Landon Dickerson, and Darian Dalcourt are probably the three primary options right now.
All right, we'll get to the defense in just a moment. But right now it's time for Coach Talk. Coach Saban knows there's going to be a lot to get through this year. And that includes, of course, off the field, maybe more so than on the field. Even still, the players are proving their commitment to what it takes to play football at Alabama under these circumstances. And Coach has noticed.
We have a chance to have a pretty good team, but you know, there's going to be a lot of variables that we have to overcome this year relative to the circumstances that we're in. So I'm excited about the fact that the players are committed, and I'm hopeful that everybody will stay very much committed. I have no reason to think that they won't, but it's a changing time right now in terms of how people get affected by various things. But our guys have been really, really good about it, and I've really enjoyed the fact that once these guys made a decision to try to play and try to accomplish something, they've all stayed pretty much committed to it.
Rodney, I think that's huge. We've discussed that here on the program. Commitment, buy-in, the way you handle the situation. Ken Niumatalua is a great football coach at Navy, but they didn't have any contact. They went in a game last night against Brigham Young, Rodney. They got beat 53-3. They're an option football team. They're a physical football team. They didn't catch up to the speed of the game. How you prepare and how your players buy in and stay on the same page, I think is going to be crucial for this season. You agree?
Very crucial. I think the teams that have the best chance to win and win big this year, Gary, are the teams that have been managed the best, and that starts with the head coach. And I think, you know, it's not just about, you mentioned the physical contact. That's certainly important, but also I think mentally, the things that we've gone through over the last 6 months, I think keeping those players focused throughout that process and where we are right now is the most important thing. And I think it certainly seems like the vibe we get is that this Alabama team is extremely focused.
All right, Alabama freshman linebacker Will Anderson is getting some rave reviews and creating some buzz in fall camp. According to AL.com's Matt Zenitz, sources say Anderson, quote, has been a disruptive presence and consistent standout throughout fall camp, even when matched up against Alabama's first-team offensive line. That's a direct quote on Zenitz's report. Anderson's a five-star recruit out of Hampton, Georgia. He was rated the #1 weak side defensive end in the nation and in the class of 2020, and he seems to be establishing himself as a standout in Alabama's star-studded linebacker class. Rodney, we'll get to the defense overall, but Anderson, we're hearing, is really looking impressive and living up to his billing.
Yeah, he's a guy, Gary, that probably a little over a year ago was rated number 150 to 200 in the country, blew it out at the Alabama camp. Kirby Smart, Georgia, really didn't recruit him until later on, but Alabama picked him up early. And he was a guy that you knew once he went through the Alabama camp, talking to observers, this guy's going to be a five-star talent. I mean, and I think Will Anderson, Drew Sanders, those are two names that I think the fans need to remember.
And just a quick thought on this defense overall. You heard Christian Harris say it. I mean, they want to get back to the Alabama standard. Injuries were a huge part of it last year. No excuse, just reality. But so far, so good on the injury front. A lot of experience, a lot of guys coming back. Rodney, this defense is hungry. Now, they got to get out on the field and prove it, but I get a really good vibe from this group. Do you?
Yeah, I think they've got a chip on their shoulder, Gary, not just the players, but I think some of the coaches. You've got the whole staff defensively back except for Freddie Roach coming in for Brian Baker on the defensive line, which I think Brian Baker's an excellent coach, and but Freddie Roach is going to do really good things, I think, with this defensive line. Gary, I feel really good about the vibes we're getting about the defense. I think over time, this defense is really going to develop into an outstanding unit.
All right. ESPN released its preseason All-American team, and, buddy, is it ever loaded with Alabama players. There are 6 Crimson Tide players out of 23 total on the preseason list. Think about that. 6 out of 23. That's like a third, dude. Wide receiver Devontae Smith, offensive lineman Alex Leatherwood, and Deontay Brown. Jalen Waddle is listed as kick return specialist. Linebacker Dylan Moses, cornerback Patrick Surtain II. Outside of Alabama, no other team has more than 2 players listed on the ESPN preseason All-American list. That is impressive. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama baseball secures a commitment out of Hartselle, which is a great baseball town. in the class of 2023. We'll have details. No breaks on football recruiting for the Crimson Tide either. Tide adds another star to its 2021 class, and it's at a position of need, tight end. Plus, we'll be getting your phone calls, emails, and tweets. There's the phone number as always, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Go ahead and call now so you can get through. There's the email address, TITV@WVUA23.com, or you can tweet at us. Make sure you use the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. 20 years on the air. Tider Insider TV. We'll be right back after this. And we're back on another Tuesday evening edition of TITV. I'm Gary Harris, sitting across the studio from Tider Insider guru Rodney Orr. The 2021 recruiting class, man, what's happened over the last couple of months has been amazing, but the coaching staff just keeps on getting it done. They wanted a tight end in this class. You know, you've got Forrestall, he's a senior. The transfer from North Carolina is a graduate student, so they're going to be leaving. And Alabama picked up a commitment from Robbie Alts, a tight end out of Rock Hill, South Carolina today. Alts is a three-star recruit in the 24/7 Sports Composite. But make no mistake, this is Alabama's #1 guy at the position. 6'4", 240 pounds. He's the first tight end commitment. He's an outstanding athlete, can really go up and get the ball, can block too. You see how big he is right there in that picture. Plus, Rodney, he plans on being an early enrollee, which is what you're looking for now, let's be honest. And most of your signees, you want them to get in here in January and start working toward being a college football player. Tell us about Alts, and was I correct when I said I think he was Alabama's #1 priority at the position?
Well, he's certainly up there. There's no question about that, Gary. When you look at Robbie Alts, you talk about the star system. I think at tight end that's kind of misleading. I think because you take a guy with his kind of tools, his kind of frame, his kind of athleticism, but he's got a mean streak. I mean, this guy is really physical. He loves to mix it up. Gary, if you turn your head, he'll lay you out. He's got some impressive video. Very physical player, as I said. Got the right mentality. I think he's a perfect Saban player, if you ask me. Really like Robbie Alts. Think he's going to be an outstanding player.
And for that position, as I said, with Forrestall leaving, Carl Tucker, the North Carolina transfer, only here for a year, Alabama really needed a tight end. They get one. Do you think they might take another in this class?
Well, they have Caden Clark, who was committed in the previous class with gray shirt, Gary, so that would give them two in this class. Caden Clark from Akron, Ohio. So this would be, Alts actually would be two. Okay,
gotcha. Good point. All right, we're going to move along. Crimson Tide Baseball added a 2023 commitment on Sunday. Well, they're lining up to play for Coach Bohannon here at Alabama. This kid is a few years away, but he comes from a baseball powerhouse, Hartselle High School. Coleman Mizell, left-handed hitting outfielder. He's already 6'2", 205 pounds. You figure he'll get bigger. I like this. He's a three-sport athlete. I like guys that play them all, man. I just think that's good for you. According to Perfect Game, he has the ability to drive the baseball to either gap and hit for power. That projects for a long time. So, Rodney, again, Alabama baseball under Coach Bohannon, they were off to that fast start last year. Only one loss when the season got jerked out from under him. But it's clear that he's building momentum, kind of like Nick Saban did when he got here, through recruiting.
Yeah, he's an evaluator. There's no question about that. Coach Bohannon does an outstanding job. Gary, I mean, he's widely recognized as one of the best evaluators, recruiters in the country, and I think that's the key. You know, get the talent, get the players here, develop them, and I think the program's going to continue to improve.
Absolutely. Well, Justin Thomas, former Bama men's golfer, is the PGA of America Player of the Year for the second time. Thomas also won the award in 2017. He has 3 wins this season, but more importantly, he won the money title and finished third in the Varden Trophy race for scoring. Thomas finishes ahead of second-place finisher John Rahm and Colin Morikawa for the PGA of America Player of the Year honor. Dustin Johnson is the favorite to claim the PGA Tour's Player of the Year award, as voted on by the tour membership, but still a big deal here for JT. Well, still to come on TITV, former Alabama center Ryan Kelly is now the highest paid center in the National Football League. We've got details coming up on a new 4-year extension in Indianapolis. And next, your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, there's the phone number, 205-348-9882. Go ahead and call in now. We want to hear from you, Tider Insider Nation. We'll be right back after this. The Indianapolis Colts have locked in the centerpiece of their offensive line. Former Crimson Tide center Ryan Kelly got a 4-year, $50 million contract extension with Indy. Kelly was a Pro Bowler last season. He was drafted 18th overall in the first round in the 2016 draft. And in 4 seasons, he started 51 games, including all 16 last season. According to Pro Football Focus, Kelly has earned the 6th highest run blocking grade among starting centers in the NFL. Good for him, Rodney. Was a pleasure to cover when he was here at Alabama. Class act, great young man, and grew up in Ohio, so he's there in the Midwest, and he loves the team, and obviously they love him.
Yeah, that was a Sal Sinceri find up there, Gary, in recruiting. You talk about 3-star players. He was a 3-star player. A guy that really wasn't that highly recruited. Ohio State didn't offer him. Alabama brought him in, and you talk about development. They developed him into a first-round draft pick.
Roll Tide. All right, phone line-wise, what we got cooking in there? Sammy from Walker County is first up tonight. The Tomato Man. Hey, Sammy, hadn't heard from you in a while. How you doing, pal?
Hey, Gary, Rodney, great job as always. Gary, you're bringing them in on that promo you're getting this season. Bringing it on in there, buddy. Doing a great job.
Thank you, man.
My question probably would be more so to Rodney, but
okay.
Let me throw this in about, did you notice that signing bonus that the center got? He got a real nice signing bonus, but the question would be, Rodney, what will they finish up with? I know they're holding out for the defensive back prospect over in Pinson Valley, but the last 2 or 3 prospects, what do you think they'll finish up with? I see about the tight end. How will they finish up, and who will they finish up?
Yeah, Sammy, if I look at it offensively, I think certainly another wide receiver, whether it's Brian Thomas out of the state of Louisiana or someone else. Maybe an offensive lineman if they got the right guy. I mean, if Amarius Mims, a 5-star player out of Georgia, wants to come, you never turn him down, although I think he's probably ends up at Georgia, maybe even Tennessee. They're certainly in the mix strongly as well. On the defensive side, they're still recruiting some defensive linemen, maybe a couple of more. They're in on some really, really good defensive linemen. There's maybe a linebacker they would take. There's a couple of DBs you mentioned, talking about Kool-Aid, McKinstry out of Pinson Valley. There's some other guys that they're recruiting. So I would think those are the positions right now to kind of focus on. They only have about 5, maybe 6 spots left, so we'll see what happens.
All right, thank you for the phone call, Sammy. Let's go down to Demopolis. Russell in Demop, down there in Marengo County, is with us. Hey, Russell, how are you?
I am good tonight, old buddy. How y'all doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks.
I always call in on this question here.
Okay.
What about our kicker? What have we gotten done? How we doing with it? That's my question. I'm going to hang up and listen to it.
Hey, listen, Russell, I get it. I mean, people want to see it in the game. I understand that. But, Rodney, I think Alabama, and I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, I think they're in a really good situation with 2 scholarship kickers. And, I think this is going to be the year where kicking really steps up and they have a good year.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. I think Will Reichard certainly has a ton of potential out of Hoover. Unfortunately, was injured last year, but he's healthy, kicking the ball pretty well. Gary, for the most part, I think. And then Joseph Bulovas is back. He's got a lot of experience. He's hit some big kicks. He's missed a couple, but certainly a guy that has a lot of experience. As far as punting goes, Ty P. Ryan's back. J.K. Scott, Gary, I don't think we've mentioned his brother Charlie Scott's here now, a transfer. Maybe be tough to judge him in terms of comparing him to J.K., but he's an outstanding punter as well. Sam Johnson out of Oak Mountain, those are some of the guys that I think are still competing for that punting spot. But I think the kicking game overall should be better.
All right. We're not done yet. Coming up on Tider Insider Television, Rodney Harrison's going to Cleveland. The former Bama safety is off to his 2nd team in the NFL after just a couple seasons in Jacksonville. And more phone calls, emails, and tweets. Phone lines are open right now at 205-348-9882. So you go ahead and give us a call. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. A lot of movement with Bama guys in the NFL. We don't have time to run it all down for you. We will mention that the Jacksonville Jaguars are in full-blown roster purge mode. They traded safety Ronnie Harrison to the Cleveland Browns for a 2021 5th-round pick. He figures to start there in Cleveland. And long snapper Carson Tinker is reuniting with Joe Judge. He's now the head coach of the New York Giants. Judge was a special teams assistant at Alabama when Carson was the long snapper there, so he is on the practice squad, but he'll be available if needed in New York City. All right, let's go right back to the phone lines, and our good pal CB here in Tuscaloosa is with us. Hey, CB, what's up, man?
Hey, man, how y'all? What a great accomplishment. Of course, my memory's pretty shaky, but wasn't okay. He wasn't that big when he come here as a center, was he?
Yeah, he probably was 260-ish, 265-ish. You're right. Like Rodney said, he was maybe an overlooked prospect there by the local schools, Ohio State being the main one, but they beefed him up here, and excellent player, and just what you want in an offensive lineman. Rodney, he was tough, he was hard-nosed, he was studious, and turned himself into a first-round draft pick, and now the richest center in the National Football League.
Yeah, I remember Justin Smiley, the former great Alabama offensive guard, telling me about Ryan Kelly. You know, Justin helped out as a grad assistant at one time. He said, listen, this guy has the best body control of any offensive lineman I've ever seen. Now, think about that, Gary, what Justin spent about 7 years in the NFL. That was the one thing about him. He was just so athletic, CB, and like you said, smart. And he had an opportunity to develop behind, you know, some really good players in front of him, Barrett Jones being one of those.
All right, let's get to an email real quick before we close it out. This is from Slim in Tuscaloosa. Will the coaches consider moving Hawk? And he's referring to Shane Lee, the linebacker. Kendall Jones was a signee a few years ago that was nicknamed Hawk, never made it here, to the nose guard position like they did with Robert Stewart. That was a long time ago with Robert Stewart, a running back and other positions. Did turn out to be a great nose tackle under Gene Stallings. I don't think there are any plans to move Shane Lee to the defensive line. Do you, Rod?
I don't see it, to be honest with you. I think he's right where he's going to be, playing inside linebacker.
And he's a good one. He started as a freshman last year. All right, we're going to come back and wrap up this edition of Tider Insider TV right after this on WVUA 23. Former Crimson Tide softball All-American Haley McClenny is some kind of player. She made the ESPN top playlist. Check out this grab to rob extra bases of the batter. McClenny still got it. Her team Osterman, for Kat Osterman, won that game 2-1. She was a big reason why. All right, that's going to do it for Tider Insider Television. You can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 following the news at 10, or find it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you again next week.